Christina Herrick, produce editor for The Packer and host of Tip of the Iceberg podcast. And I'm here today with Greg Gatzke, founder and chairman of ZAG Technical Services. And we're here to talk about ACH fraud. Thanks for joining me, Greg.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And I feel excited. I always get a little excited when I've got a return guest. So you're another return guest. It's an exciting thing when I don't chase away guests.
No, I appreciate the rare opportunity to get a second shot. So thank you.
Yeah. So, I alluded to our conversation surrounds ACH fraud. So why don't we get into it? What is it? Why should our viewers be concerned about it? Tell me a little bit.
Sure. So ACH fraud is when criminals pose mainly as a vendor and they ask you to change. They say, "Hey, we've changed our bank account. Please send payments to this new bank." And it's normally not the vendor's bank. It's a criminal bank. And so they use that to steal money from people. It's very intriguing because uh, criminals can actually hack into vendors' emails and actually send the email from the vendor's address. I mean, that's kind of the worst case, but it could also just be they set up a fake account with a new different email address and stuff like that, and send in the request. So it's something that's happening a lot, and it's continuing to happen.
Yes, and as you're talking about that, I'm thinking, for a lot of produce industry businesses or those involved in the produce industry, they've got a lot of vendors.
They
And
do.
someone might be, oh, dare I say, overworked in processing payments. And if you're holding both jobs, both receivables and making payments, there's a lot going on there. So I could see where it would be very easy for someone in accounting to just be in a hurry, overlook it, make the change, and not think anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's you know we're all under stress. We do too much work. We have too many vendors, and we pay a lot of money to vendors. Our clients do, right? I mean, it's large sums that happen. Um, that's why we have to be on top of it. The criminals are doing a shotgun type approach, and what they're looking for is the weakest link. And
Yeah.
in reality, anybody, any day could be the weakest link. You could just make a mistake. You could not follow processes, and just set the company up for a significant loss. So it's something that takes due diligence and just a lot of rigor in how we operate.
Yeah. So, I mean, are they increasing? Is it kind of steady, or is it just that more people and more companies are being vocal about it? Your companies are alerting us. I feel like I've heard about this a little bit. So, tell me a little bit about that. Are things changing? Are hackers getting more sophisticated? Why are we hearing about this more?
Well, we're hearing about it more. What Number one, I think people are starting to open up about it because everybody's being hit by it, and we have this shame, and we're trying to burst that bubble of shame and just share openly about it. It's embarrassing to lose $40,000 via an ACH fraud, right? But in reality, the attacks are at least staying the same, probably increasing, and they're getting significantly better. And the reason for that is I believe criminals are using artificial intelligence now to kind of craft the emails. Criminals use AI the same way we do. They do
Yeah.
it with write better and to program better. Well, writing better, they're using it as a way to do ACH fraud in a better way. They no longer misspell. They no longer make mistakes that were triggers. So because of that, we just need to up our game.
Yeah. I got a text message the other day that one of my Amazon packages was delayed, but the O in Amazon was the number 0. So that was easy, but yes, you're right. It unfortunately, as AI helps us do our jobs, it also helps the bad guys do their job too. Where maybe next time it wouldn't be quite as obvious to me that's an issue.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, fundamentally, I would just ask, accounting people, CFOs, et cetera, to ask themselves, how often do companies change banks?
True.
They don't. I mean, we're changing a bank right now, but it's our second time in 25 years.
That's a
So
lot of work.
um, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and clients don't like it. Customers don't like it. So just realize we don't accept it without thinking about it. Follow processes. Have manual processes to validate.
Absolutely. And talk about some of those other ways that either companies or their employees can really start to pay attention to things. So I think that's a good point. Is I hate to say question everything, but really that is part of being web savvy and being savvy in this day and age of hackers is questioning whether or not something is real, looking it over, looking for details. But what are some other ways that people within a company can kind of protect themselves against vulnerabilities that then could lead to this?
Absolutely. So there are some things that IT can do. IT can do some things to help block these types of attacks. One is called DMARC. It's pretty technical, but it's a free setting. DMARC is DMARC. If people want to Google it or just reach out to me and ask, but that's a way to block these types of phishing attacks significantly. Another way is MFA on email, stuff like that. But ultimately, it's not an IT solution that will solve this problem. It is accounting. Accounting, anytime they get a bank request to change a bank account, the accounting team has to call a known good number and validate that change. Don't do it on the phone number and the email that comes in because the criminal staff those answering. But do it manually, do it every time. Verify that your team is doing it. Verify they're not making a mistake. Because the one time they skip it, you'll be out money. It's horrible.
Yeah, so kind of what you're thinking is, if I'm the company and I email you and I say, "Hey, we're changing banks. Here's what you need to do." You instead of just taking whatever form or whatever might be the case within that email or however that information comes, instead of taking that and using that, you suggest maybe calling me and saying, "Yeah, did you really change your bank?" Or looking on the website, or like, is that kind of what you're saying there?
No, absolutely. Call. Don't Google. Don't look on a website. Just call a known good number, meaning a number I have because I've worked with you in the past, or we have it in the ERP system. Call that known good number and validate it that way. Don't reply validating it. Don't reply saying, give me something on letterhead. Criminals will do all that, and it's too easy to fake.
Yeah.
So you've got to just pick up the phone and talk to somebody. And that's hard, especially, when you're dealing with overseas vendors and things like that, it gets difficult, but it's difficult, but it's worth it.
Yes, even if it's not $40,000, even if it's less than that, that's still an issue. So one thing I was thinking when you were talking is, so let's say I was susceptible to fraud, and let's say I had a transaction, I did the thing. Is it a one and done ACH fraud, or because now I've paid you, am I more susceptible to hackers? Like, are there other things that can happen with this? If I click on a link or anything like that, or like what happens if you do get if you do get susceptible or you do fall victim to it?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. In reality, uh, the what you're doing is you're changing where the payments are going. So
Yeah.
depending on how often you're paying this vendor, you may get hit multiple times before that vendor calls you up and says, "Why aren't you paying me?" Which is how you're going to find out. So there could be multiple attacks. Um, I haven't seen where someone falls victim and they continue to fall victim. I see everyone's just getting hit all the time. So I don't know if that's the case, but definitely, the speed to figuring it out is a factor. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, I'm thinking about it, especially with a large company. If it's multiple shipments of a product or multiple shipments of different products from the same vendor, yeah, you might be making multiple payments within a short period of time. Very, very quickly, that money could ramp up and things could escalate. So, yeah, that's that's really
So, so,
interesting. So,
so let me say, if you think you're a victim of it, call your bank immediately, get
yeah,
advice from them. Call, they may be able to pull it back, they may not. Call the government, call the FBI, call the Secret Service. I've heard also as a potential.
interesting.
I've never called them, but I've involved with the FBI. Just take it, do everything you can to reclaim the money if you fall victim to it.
Yes, because I mean that's just an unfortunate lesson that you don't want anyone to have to listen or have to go through.
And it takes a lot of profit to generate that kind of profit. And this goes
Yeah.
direct off profit, right? So it's a huge deal.
So what else should our listeners and viewers know and understand about ACH fraud? Is there a seasonal nature to it, or just because everyone's paying everything all the time, there's not really like an ebb and flow to when things happen?
No, I don't think there's a seasonal. What I will say though is, if criminals get into your email system and get into someone's email, they oftentimes will sit and lurk and just watch
Gosh.
watch communications and then interject at the right time, right? They won't send you the invoice. They'll wait for the user to send the invoice, the vendor, and then as that vendor, they'll send a follow up saying, "Oh, by the way, here's our bank change." So the other critical thing can be watching for unauthorized access into your system. And that's something that just takes IT can do and just kind of work on that to minimize the time in the system.
Yeah, that's a little scary, to think that
Yes.
someone's just sitting there watching and waiting and trying to understand that. I'm sure they're learning about your behaviors and what types of emails you get to then, be able to pounce when the time is right. Ugh.
Yep. How you sign them, what your signature looks like, how you talk, all that. They're smart.
Oh my gosh. Well, this is really scary. I mean, I know I hate to say that our conversations tend to be a little bit this way, but we had one on cybersecurity, which I think it's important, but I also am kind of like, oh goodness. So are there any positives we can leave our listeners and viewers with, other than just, scaring them a little bit?
Well, no, so, I mean, we use ACH because it makes sense. It makes us more efficient
Yeah.
and it's good for business, right? So understand the overarching thing is good, right? Printing
Yeah.
checks is bad. There's there's security issues around that significant. So ACH can be safer, right? Doing ACH and whitelisting the ACH payments, it can be a good thing. It definitely makes you better and more efficient. So it's just we're trying to raise, here we're trying to raise concerns about it so that it's utilized correctly. But overall, I mean, it is a good thing that we use it. So
Yeah,
that's some
that's good.
positive.
Yeah, that is a positive. And you're right. I mean, think about the end goal of why we're doing what we're doing. I mean, obviously there was check fraud before ACH fraud. So, it's not like fraud is anything new. It just was a little bit different, took a little bit more work. And obviously, I would assume took even longer to figure out that something was going on.
Yeah, I think it is similar. I mean, check fraud has always been there. One difference, of course, is ACH fraud can be happening from outside the country, and
Yes.
often generally does.
Yes.
That's different than check fraud in many ways, right? So it's kind of
True.
broadened that, and it's taken away some of the punishment because it's harder to catch and punish people that do it. But it's still just a continuation of business having to mitigate risks. The good thing
Well,
is we have an answer, right? It's
yeah.
this manual process. The
Yeah.
bad thing is we have to follow that process every time. So
Which, as we've alluded to, with an accounting team that might be a little stressed, so closing out a month, a quarter, trying to get those vendors paid in a timely manner, that could be something that could be easily overlooked in a rush because you've done business with that vendor for so long. And okay, so they switched banks. Okay, we'll do this quickly and get them paid. And next thing you know,
Yep.
yeah.
No, it's a concern.
Well, anything else you'd like to share with our viewers and listeners about ACH fraud?
No, I think that pretty much is the topic. I really appreciate you raising it. It's an important thing. It's companies lose money on it. It can ruin a month. It can ruin a quarter. I've seen fraud range generally. I'm pretty connected throughout the industry, and I hear about things starting around the $40,000 range. That may mean that lower ones just don't make it to my level,
Oh
but I've
goodness.
actually seen it go up to, a million plus.
Oh
So
wow.
we have to, it's a serious thing that we have to take care of. We have to watch for.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Here I thought I was hoping pie in the sky that 40,000 was the top, the limit. And turns out that's kind of on the low end of the spectrum. Oh my gosh. Yes. Well, this has been an absolutely interesting conversation. All my conversations with you leave me thinking so much about how I use the internet and how I behave, and my, I guess, health activity, and trying to be safe on the web, which is always great, but it's always a little scary.
Remember, technology is a great thing. Technology makes us better. Technology enables, well, we've all known this in food production. It's always enabled food production. It's exponentially doing more now, and it's going to be more of that. We just need to safeguard it and do it appropriately.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Greg, for joining me on the podcast again. Like I said, gold star for coming back on and not being scared off. I appreciate the time.
Oh, thank you so much. I hope to do it again one day.
Absolutely. And don't forget, if you like what you hear, you can catch new episodes of Tip of the Iceberg on your favorite podcast platform like Google, Spotify, Apple, and more. And if you really like what you're hearing, leave us a review. Give us some stars, leave us a review, tell us what you like. And if you don't like what you hear, you know how to find me. Let me know. And that's a wrap for this edition of Tip of the Iceberg brought to you by the Packer Produce Market Guide and Farm Journal. Join us again soon for more industry insights. Bye.